Hi guys, we are going to be starting a new chapter today. For the next few weeks, several weeks actually, we're going to be talking about different types of psychological disorders. This seems to be a favorite amongst students just because it's really interesting. You see it a lot in movies and TV. It's kind of relatable depending on the issue, and it's just interesting. It's what you think of when you think of psychology. So, today we're going to be focusing on anxiety based disorders. You guys are going to be having a test specifically for anxiety because it's a really kind of like a long section. And then we're going to go into other types of disorders like depression, schizophrenia, and things like that, personality disorders. So 15% of adults have symptoms of the typical anxiety-based disorder. 15% is pretty large. I would venture to think that it was perhaps even more just because these kind of surveys, there's, you know, sometimes they're not that reliable. Sometimes people like to downplay their symptoms. So I'd say maybe 15 to 20% of people have anxiety based disorders. So, anxiety, when we talk about anxiety, we don't really necessarily talk about like nervousness. It's more of a vague sense of apprehension that something aversive will occur. So, just a vague sense of uneasiness, apprehension, I guess nervousness, but it's a little bit more than that. Someone can have anxiety without having an anxiety disorder. Those are two different things. You know, I feel like everyone can experience anxiety in their lives at some point. It does not mean that you have an anxiety disorder. An anxiety disorder is a group of mental disorders which fear of anxiety and associated maladaptive behaviors are the core of the disturbance. So it's actually disturbing your day to day life. It's a fear of having anxiety and the anxiety itself. Okay, so anxiety disorders a lot of the time are symptomatic, including feelings of anxiety and personal inadequacy, like you're not as good as you should be or you're not as good as others. These individuals also avoid with dealing with their problems, which makes the anxiety just 10 times worse. They're unable to free themselves of worries and fears. A lot of us may meditate or may exercise or do things to kind of take our mind off of anxiety and worries, but people with anxiety disorders do not have that luxury. They are not able to stop worrying. They could cause, that shouldn't be emotional problems. They could cause physical problems, such as sweating, sudden sweating, going into like cold sweats, muscle tightness, weakness, and fatigue. So, anxiety disorders don't just affect your mental state, they affect your physical well being as well. Oh. So here is a list of anxiety-based disorders. They include but are not limited to generalized anxiety disorder, which is what we're going to be talking about today. It could be talked about as GAD as well. Phobic disorder or phobias, panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD, and post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. So generalized, oh, I really need to. Generalized anxiety disorder is an anxiety disorder in which a person is continually tense, apprehensive, and in a state of autonomic nervous system arousal. So that's a mouthful. Basically, GAD is just a very blanket term It's not very specific. You're not afraid of anything specific. It's just you're continuously anxious and you cannot get a break. There are other symptoms to it, and if you take a look in the DSM, which is the diagnostic and oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Statistical manual? Diagnostic and statistical manual? That is what psychologists use, and that will give you the criteria that you would need to meet in order to be diagnosed with GAD. So you probably need to be experiencing these symptoms for a certain amount of time. Sometimes it's a few weeks, sometimes it's a few months. It depends on the disorder. I'd have to look it up. But you're constantly on edge. You sweat a lot. You shake. Your heart beats really fast very often. And you're just tense, anxious, and you just really can't get a break. That is GAD. This disorder can lead to sensations of choking, which can definitely cause further panic, further anxiety. Chest pains, kind of feeling like a heart attack, dizziness, trembling, hot flashes. You can also experience muscular tension. So that could be in your arms, in your head, in your shoulders, just like in your core. Inability to relax, that kind of goes along with the muscular tension. A strained face. This is pretty interesting because you don't think of your face as being strained, but when you are completely relaxed or asleep, your face muscles really just kind of droop and relax. When you're under a lot of anxiety or pressure, you tend to really tense up your face, and it could lead to headaches and just soreness and stuff like that. Poor appetite, constant state of apprehension, and difficulty sleeping. A lot of the time, people with anxiety do not sleep well. They have insomnia, they wake up worrying about things, or they have trouble getting to sleep in the first place. And that is it for generalized anxiety disorder. Now, I am going to post a video about someone with generalized anxiety disorder, kind of like an interview thing. And you are also going to be reading an article on generalized anxiety disorder and a particular way to treat it. It's called CBT. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. This is what I had to use when I was working in the prison as a counselor. I had to use CBT on my residents. That's what we called them, on my residents. So there will be around 3 or 4 questions at the end of the article. If you have any questions, please let me know. I am going to be available for virtual office hours on Thursday, today, at, I believe you guys are 11 a.m. 11 a.m. I'll definitely have the info on Google Classroom. So if you have any questions about this or you want to catch up on anything, please tune in for that. All right. Again, if you have any questions, email me or come to the office hours. Have a good one, guys.